Hello. It is Wednesday, and oh my God, we had a lot to talk about even before we got on the show today. My name is Rob Morales, RCO Network, here with my special, esteemed, fabulous, beautiful, so many adjectives after that, co-host, Miss Mary.
Hello.
Van Alstyne. Yeah, it's just she's here back here. We're here every Wednesday talking about and exploring the emotions that we go through as people, as business owners, but more so as people. Just because that's the shit we have to deal with.
That's what we are.
You know, and I feel like this show, as we pursue it and continue this journey together with Mary, that we're able to kind of talk about these things that people typically avoid and don't really recognize and just kind of shove off, and it becomes burdensome after a while. You know, in this case, today's show is about we took on a big load today.
We did, yeah. I don't quite know where we're going yet, but we'll get there.
I don't know either, but we're talking about the business of relationships.
The business of relationships, I like that.
So every Wednesday we talk about emotions and the things we go through as people, hopefully being stronger as business owners, but as individuals too. So with Mary here, we got on the show a little bit early. I've been talking about it for literally almost a half hour, maybe 40 minutes, about the direction of how we can go. And relationships have been, I think, the most prominent thing. It's a New Year's resolution, finding love, all that stuff. You know, but we really don't talk about the business aspect of what a relationship is.
This is true. We don't.
How many times? Okay, so I'm gonna ask everybody that's out there right now. How many times have you talked to either your spouse, your intimate partner, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it is? How many times have you sat down and said, you know what, I find you very attractive, so that's a plus on your end. I see that you bring, a lot of resources. You have a good knowledge about certain things, and I feel like I think we can pursue a relationship together.
Is this the interview process?
Yes.
Am I going to get my offer letter?
You could. I mean, it depends on how well you do in this interview. And that's really what dating is, right?
It really is. Yeah. It's without all the formalities. Absolutely. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like you usually don't have sex with somebody the first night unless, well, some people do.
Some people do. And we don't judge.
And we don't judge at all. But no, that's kind of the unspoken contract. Right. Yeah. That the acceptance of somebody else is that unspoken contract, but we don't talk about the terms of the contract. Mm-hmm. We get into business all the time and we formulate these contracts between another person because we just aren't familiar with them. So it makes sense to write it out on paper, what we want out of this relationship. So if I'm starting a business and I'm buying a building and I'm buying a franchise, well, there's all these terms and conditions, because if you don't fulfill those terms and conditions, what? Divorce. Right?
Yeah, that seems really daunting to do in a relationship, I would think, right?
Well, it subtracts from the emotions.
Yeah.
It subtracts from the Disney, prince coming to save you from the magical castle tower.
Yeah, what kind of honeymoon phase would that be?
I don't know.
However, there are people that the prenuptial is kind of a contract that you do, right, when you're getting married.
Is it?
And the prenup, yeah, if this happens, then this. If this happens, then this. If we split up, I get this, you get this, And
well, that usually means you have something to lose if you don't.
I think we all do.
Doesn't that take away from the romanticism of it?
I don't know. That's a debate to be had, for sure. I think that the people sit on both ends of that. I'm not quite sure where I sit on that.
The prenup?
Yeah.
So if you were in a relationship and somebody presented a prenup, like, hey, I feel like you're of value to my life, and I feel like we're going in a very positive direction, and I want to get married to you, but, there's some certain things that I'm not too sure about here. Here's a prenuptial agreement that says that I get to keep what's mine and you get to keep what's yours, and that's all.
I mean, I can kind of understand that point of view because I've been in a situation where I've gotten divorced, and there could have been assets taken from me that I wished, thank goodness were protected in my name beforehand, but not to get too personal, but I could see if someone had, whatever their assets were, millions of dollars, multiple properties, like what you acquired before we met, absolutely that's yours, but and then what about what we create going forward together as a partnership?
But see, there's so many things to there's I guess a dichotomy, right? There's the logical sense of like, hey, you got stuff, I got stuff, and my stuff's important to me, and I'm not willing to share it with you, obviously, because we're signing this prenuptial agreement, and if shit goes south, I want my stuff back.
Yeah. Does it mean that the stuff is together until you split up? If that happens, I'm not sure. I've never actually seen a prenup, so.
I know, I haven't either. I guess I haven't made enough money to really have a prenup to argue over crap about.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it comes down to. And the most valuable things, going through my father's passing, was cars, money, and houses. That's really the only value. Everything else is just bullshit anyway.
Yeah.
You're fighting over what? Furniture.
Hey, when my dad passed away, I got a boat that was sitting in the garage that actually cost me money. So that was there's that too. Yeah, I absolutely.
I will sign that prenup. You can have the boat. That's fine.
I learned it cost me money to get rid of it, but I did learn that I definitely want to have a will in place, and I got that in place so that nobody has to deal with all of that when I'm gone. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and so we talk about relationships in a form of business, and I brought up the question of if we establish relationships like normal, like intimate, like boyfriend girlfriend, husband wife, if we establish that into more of a written contract, into a business format, I think we'd have more prosperous, more kind of better relationships. I would think that's just my thought.
Would that kind of be what an arranged marriage is too?
No, because somebody else is choosing that for you. You're willingly getting into a relationship.
But I would think the process would be the same. Kind of, here's the. I mean,
here's the dowry. Here's the 100 calves.
Here's what you get. Here's I don't know. But that's just stuff and connecting good families, right? As far as that arranged marriages goes. But I really think that some planning and some talking and some communication before getting married, and maybe not writing it in a contract, but having what your expectations are of a partnership, of a marriage before going in, and being very clear on that together as a unit and individually.
But if the sex is good and you're you're like just having fun, I'm like, why would you talk about that? Why would I think the hesitation to really bring some of this stuff up is that you don't want to screw it up. Like if you introduce anything different than what's going on right now.
Yeah.
I mean, if the sex is like great and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I don't want to say anything to screw this up, because that's for guys. For you guys out there, you guys have total control over a relationship. If you say the wrong fucking thing, it's over. But you can say it in one word and it's over, right?
Well, I mean, no, not if you have someone who's adult and mature and ready to listen. I mean, it depends on what it is, I guess, because there's a couple things you could say to me that would be like name calling, that it would be over. But
that's what I mean. That's just the simple. Something as simple as just a word or a phrase. Maybe divulging some inner inhibition could easily just have you go the other way and say, I had fun, but. For instance, love, right? Saying I love you for the first time, that is a big deal for most people, and a lot of people hold back. They have the feeling, they know it, they feel it, they go to work writing it out, they've got little hearts and everything, and it's like, if I say it, are they going to leave? Yeah. And that really is a big weight on people.
Well, I mean, I've studied a lot about relationships and the masculine and the feminine, and what I've learned and what I'm practicing in my life going forward is full disclosure from day one on the important things to me, and not withholding. When I mean, you could ask my current partner. I expressed love very soon in the relationship, because I decided after my last relationship that I was no longer going to try to hide parts of myself to keep a relationship together, because ultimately, if something that I'm going to say or do or something that I want in my life is going to end the relationship, then I want that relationship to end sooner than later. You know what I mean? So like it's like when people get married and they don't tell each other what their desires are as far as having kids and that kind of thing. It's like, why not expose these things from the very beginning? Because of the chances of messing up the great sex, right? You don't want that.
That's really what a relationship is, right? Isn't it? The difference between like a boyfriend, girlfriend, and a friend is really the sex part.
I don't know.
I mean, you're kind of doing the same thing, kind of hanging out, enjoying each other's time. Is the physical touch.
There's that.
And the insertion.
Oh my goodness.
Did I go too far? Am I going to lose you, Mary? Am I going to lose you by saying insertion?
I'm leaving. No, I'm not that easily offended, thank goodness.
Oh, thank you.
On anything, really.
But again, if we approach things in more of like a contractual way, I mean, there's so much of it. I'll give you an example. When I said I love you to Violet for the first time, I had to internally and know that if I said that, she could potentially just say, "Oh shit, this is too effing real. I gotta go." You know, and it's that communication I think sometimes we avoid that really pushes us away. That really kind of like doesn't allow us to be our true selves. And I had to accept when I said that for the first time that she didn't say it back, and she didn't say it back the first time. So I'm like, that's how I feel. I have to own up to this feeling. This is how I feel. And I have to express that to her. And it literally took her about, I want to say 1 to 2 weeks to reciprocate that and say it back. But I had to just kind of like swallow the idea that, you know what, she may not be reciprocal. She may not say that back.
You had to release the expectations and go forward with exposing your true self, which I think is great. Yeah.
It was scary as shit, though.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Because the minute you say "I love you," it's like, oh, well, how do you respond to that?
Yeah.
You know, do I really feel the same way? Do I? And I've had it both sides. I've had it where I've said it first, and then I've had it where they said it to me, and I'm like, oh, is that how you feel? Because I'm not feeling the same.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that you aren't willing to just say it to appease the other person is good too. So that's that whole practice of exposing your true self to someone. And not just telling them what they want to hear in order to keep the relationship going, you know, or agreeing with them on something. I don't want kids either. And then turning around once you get married and saying, no, I want kids and we're going to have kids. You know, that's a very deep subject. Like there's a lot of things that we really need to get out there before we make that commitment.
Yeah, and I think what it drills down to is expectations, right? And
Exactly.
So we're talking about merging two lives together. You have two individual lives that you're merging together, and you have basically two tracks of life and creating a third one.
The relationship. Right?
Yeah. The relationship, you know, and some of it's unspoken, you know, part of it is like you get so wrapped up in the emotions and the feelings that you don't want to lose it. So you kind of minimize or hide what your true feelings are, what your expectations are, because you don't want to ruin the feeling. And really, like, getting into a relationship is fun. The exciting part of that, having a new sexual encounter, is fun. You know, and being wrapped up in the emotion, that fairy tale Disney, like princess thing. You know, I am a Disney princess.
I was gonna say.
You know, you get wrapped in that feeling. You don't want to lose it. You don't want to let it go. You know, and you have to at some point come to reality. There is that balance again. I think we've reiterated over and over again. There's that balance between the realization that life is here and then the fantasy that life can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
no, I was just thinking about the Disney princess thing and getting lost in. No, I'm kidding.
I do wear a pink dress once in a while.
So yeah, let's talk about expectations. What are expectations? Expectations are these beliefs that we hold true, and you know, what is a belief? It's just a thought that is true to us. And so what we don't realize sometimes is that our expectations and our beliefs about a situation, about a person, can affect the situation, right? It can affect the other person. There was a study that I had heard about where there was some children in a class, and they were just experimenting with this expectation. And they told the teacher that certain students were either gifted or troublemakers, and then they had them go through the class for a while. And when they measured the students afterwards, these specific students that they had implanted into the teacher were gifted, showed significant signs of being above average in their studies. And then some of the kids that were expected to be troublemakers or whatever, those kids actually were a handful. And and then they revealed that, like, afterwards, there was nothing gifted about these certain kids. And what this proves is that the teacher's expectations about the child it wasn't even a known expectation. It wasn't expressed to the child. You know, it wasn't like they told the child they were gifted, but it impacted the way that child showed up. You know, and we have these expectations of people in our relationships, you know, and we have these expectations of people that we work with, and those expectations dictate our behavior as well, which then in turn affects the entire situation. So expectation is a huge thing, and we really have to pay attention to what these expectations are, what these beliefs we have about the world are. You know, is the world a friendly place or is it an angry place? Well, what your belief is going to be what you get back in your reality, you know?
And I think the struggle that people have is that, you know, when they're not meeting those expectations, they kind of point the blame at the other person for not fulfilling that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a shame on us for not really exploring how those feelings and emotions are affecting us, and not being able to, the emotional growth, the maturity comes from not blaming somebody else and really not blaming yourself, but recognizing that there is a feeling there because of this behavior, because of this action, because of this other person. It's really bringing that out, bringing that inner beast out. You know, they're really helping you in a way. That they're bringing this person out that you really are hiding, you know, when they don't. Because I think the things we argue about most are what? Sex and money. I mean,
yeah,
that's really the absence of a relationship, right?
Sex, intimacy.
Does anybody else have that? Does anybody else out there watching that argue about anything else besides sex and money?
The kids, if there's kids involved.
Well, if there was enough sex in there, the kids probably would be like, "Hey," you know,
or you'd have a ton of them. They'd all watch themselves.
Yeah, you know what? You're 5 years old. Watch your 3 other brothers and sisters. But that's really the two things, because we were talking about before we started the show. Like, what do we fight over in a relationship? What are the expectations? It's really intimacy, sex, and money. You know, when we don't have enough money, then those base survival mechanisms kick in. It's like, oh shit, we don't have enough money. Are we going to be able to survive next month? Are we going to be able to survive next year? You know, and instead of like internalizing, like, hey, how can we resolve this issue? It's like projection out. Like, you're not making enough money. You're not doing enough. You know, you're going over there to the bar too much. You're like, well, and you probably are, but but at the end of the day, it's just like you point the finger out. You blame somebody. You project it out. These internal feelings. And I think what it comes down to is not really, at the end of the day, learning how to communicate between yourself and another person. Mm-hmm. And we live in fantasy land, right? That everything's supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to get that kiss, and then everything, the empire arises from the gray areas of life, and then there's all these flowers, and the birds are singing, and the squirrels are, you know, cheering.
A Disney movie.
A Disney movie.
It sounds like it.
You know, and you know, there's that expectation that things are just supposed to be taken care of ourselves. But I think if you really peel back the umbrella, you realize that, you know, you're looking for somebody to give you solace, to make you comfortable, to make you feel good, like you're like a 1-year-old baby.
Well, yeah, that's definitely steps into the realm of self-responsibility. And I think that there are two different types of expectations. And what you're talking about right now is expectations of others coupled with a victim mentality of, you know, my outer world and circumstances dictate how I feel. How you act dictates how I feel. And I expect this of you, versus the other form of expectation, which is like, oh, I'm going to drive to work today and it's going to be a shitty day because every day is a shitty day and these people always treat me like this, and just having this kind of expectation of like how things are going to turn out, which that type of expectation usually turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy on that side, you know. So there's two huge different types of expectations that can really drag you down. Yeah,
like if you're an angry person and you're driving on a freeway, you're yelling at everybody that's driving. Well, okay, so you can't control for everybody that's driving, but you can control how you feel.
Yeah.
You can control your anger.
Yeah.
You know, and in that same reverence, why can't you do that in a relationship, especially with somebody you love? Why can't you withhold that back and realize, you know what, I don't mean to be angry, but there's something amiss within me, you know, that, you know, obviously we got into this relationship, like, you know, if we were dating, Mary, you know, we got into this relationship, you know, everything's been crazy fun, and all of a sudden things start being real. You know, I'm not going to be here to blame you for things that I'm affected by, especially if you didn't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I really believe that if we're constantly getting angry or whatever it is, frustrated, it's not necessarily the other person. It's always something within ourselves. So there's an anger in there that's being triggered by someone in your external life, which is usually going to be the people that are closest to you. But the best thing to do is to stop and take a look inward and see where that's actually truly coming from.
Yeah, because
it could be coming from some feeling of inadequacy. It could come from something else, and yet we're taking it out on the wrong. You know, we're taking it out as if that's a victim mentality. We're taking it out as if it's not. I'm not the one creating my anger. It's your fault. You know, and that's a huge.
Well, and I did that in my previous marriage too. I did that. I blamed her for.
We all do that.
For everything that I was going wrong in my life. You know, I blamed her for. You know, I think at the end of the day, my ex wife did not want to have kids, but found it very difficult to really tell me that. Mm-hmm. And so as we get into kind of more resolutions and things that can help us, I think the communication is probably the thing we need to learn the most, that we are never taught. My parents were the worst example of communicating.
Mine too.
I mean, whenever they got in a fight, they would, my mom would just kind of buckle down and be quiet. My dad would just run off and just be angry, and they would never talk about it. And then like, a couple weeks later, then just go back to normal. Like, okay, well, he's happy now. Let's just kind of keep it. Well, she's not yelling at me anymore. Let's just kind of just be quiet. And then you continue on.
Sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. And then pretend it doesn't exist. And then, maybe a month or two later, something else triggers. And then all of a sudden, you're back to that circle again. It's almost like it's like this ongoing circle of whatever it is. I don't know what it's called.
Victimhood?
Possibly. Yeah. But, it's just crazy how we get into these circles and never really break free of them. And when I was in my previous marriage, that's all I did was just blame without really taking the ownership of like, hey, I'm having these feelings. And I think that was really the end of my divorce. The marker was when I'm like, I stopped blaming her and she freaked the fuck out. She just freaked out because I wasn't blaming her anymore. I was just accepting
Therefore,
like my
you
feeling.
released a part of that codependency that you needed with her and that she needed with you. She needed to be that with you, which is, you know what I mean? And then once it's almost like you stopped caring because you stopped being pissed off at me. That's that codependent behavior.
Well, it's like if somebody loves me enough to argue with me. That's what that is.
That's, yeah.
If the moment I'm like, okay, I understand, versus like, I hate you, that shows like sign of like, oh, this person not willing to play the same game that I'm used to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It freaks people out, especially if have codependent tendencies. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, those are the things that we reflect about. So we're here on the inner journey. We're coming to the last 10 minutes of theirs. But my resolution on all of this subject matter, there's so many things regarding relationships and how we approach them and what we can do to make things better. It's such a broad category. And I think at the end of the day, we all just want to be, quote unquote, happy. Whatever you define happy as. I define it as contentment. I define it as being content in my life. Mary likes happy. But we're trying to really have a resolve on expectations. And I think really not blaming another person for their faults. And it's really a perspective. As many times as I think about the things that are wrong with me, there is nothing wrong with me. There are challenges that I have, but in those challenges, those are the things that motivate me too. Like I was talking about this morning, there are things in my life that, there are certain frustrations and anger that I carry that I will never be able to let go, no matter how much I've thought about, no matter how much I've compromised and understood about these emotions. That will never go away, but it doesn't dictate my day anymore. And when I get frustrated, it's like, okay, I'm frustrated again. How can I motivate myself to use this in a constructive manner? And a lot of what my anger and frustration are coming out in like podcasts, or coming out in, what I do with the business network, what I do with real estate even. So everything that I do is manifest from this ongoing like generating source of frustration. And my resolve for that frustration is to go and connect with people and see them happy. Because when I see people happy, it kind of satisfies that. It kind of satisfies the beast, and that fulfills me, and I realized I can't blame anybody for that. It's just something that's just part of me. It's like a third arm that I'll never be able to chop off.
You never know. You just never know.
Maybe.
You just never know.
But that's what pushes me too. And I don't know if I want to lose that arm at this point. I don't know.
I get where you're coming from.
Does that resonate with you too?
Yeah, it does in a way, and I think up until just recently, I wanted certain things to stay the same because I thought that it was it has to do with spirituality, so it's very deep. But I found myself clinging to something because I thought, I don't know if I want to be that at peace with how things are. Yeah. I want to have my preferences and I want to be able to discern between this and that. And I want to have extremely emotional experiences. I don't know that I want to be this Zen, peaceful, monk that doesn't care about anything. And then it was just this small shift that happened through going through my studies where I realized that that's not necessarily what it means. If I'm at peace with things, it doesn't mean I don't care. It's just a different level of contentment or happiness, you know, and
she finally said it.
Threw it right back at you. But it's just a different level, and it doesn't mean that I can't have my preferences and my desires. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to experience the level of emotions that I experience. So it was like I was clinging on to this idea, this expectation that I had, that if I became deeply spiritual, I wouldn't be able to have desires. I wouldn't be able to have, you know, these human experiences. And I found that since I have started to lower that expectation and drop that expectation, that that's how it has to look to be spiritual, I'm having a much more expanded experience of spirituality than I ever even thought possible. So you don't know for sure that you'll never get rid of that third arm, because the possibility is you could get more fulfillment from seeing people happy. You know, you just never know. Like,
but I like using it as a tool, though.
What if you didn't need to use it as a tool, but you still had the same drive? That's a possibility.
Aha, that is the fear I have.
That you're going to lose your drive.
Will I lose my drive?
Like I was going to lose my passion if I became spiritual. You know, it's the same thing. And so I'm just inviting you to open your mind to the possibility.
Invite us to the world of Mary.
I'm inviting you to just open the idea of the possibility that it could be even better than you imagined, should you decide to let that go at some point.
Yeah, and I think the journey for me is really allowing that continual process of letting go.
And letting it unfold naturally and not forcing it too, you know?
Yeah, it's the same analogy that I always give everybody else is like when you start swimming for the first time. You're hanging on the edge, right?
Yeah.
Like you'll be fine, especially on the kiddie side, you know, on the 2.5 foot. You're like, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But as you get into the deeper, like 6 foot, 8 foot level, it's like you're still holding on the edge. You're fine because you know you can kind of go down and then push yourself back up to the edge again. But I'm in that process, just kind of letting go.
Well, and I think it's great, and I'm really proud of you because everything that you are doing, you're already in the process of healing whatever that is, that the third arm, the frustration, whatever it is deep down. Like the work that you're doing is a gentle letting go process of that. So you're already on the way, and I'm just watching it unfold.
Yes,
you know, through all of our conversations. Oh, sorry, but I am watching it unfold through all of our conversations, and I think that, you know, when you look back at this from the future, it's going to be like a big aha.
Yeah, and I think life, as people are watching, as you're tuning into the show, life is a continual evolution. It's a process. You know, there's no one answer. And I think as I've reflected on today's show, because we're at 30 minutes, miss. As I reflected on today's show, it's all about a one-step process. And don't try to like figure it out. There's no one word answer. And in this society that we've built ourselves upon, we just expect a pill to figure everything out. We expect one thing. Well, I'm a Virgo, so that must be the reason why I am the way I am.
That's an expectation.
It's just there's so many things, and as you learn more and more about yourself, I think it becomes a little bit easier. And you're able to let go of that edge just a little bit more, one more finger at a time.
Yeah, it's a very gentle process.
And your frustrations should never be projected on anybody, you know?
And if they are, we're human. Give yourself some grace and forgiveness.
Absolutely.
You know? I mean, I still lose my shit once in a while. You know what I mean?
I haven't seen it here.
And you have to be able to just have some grace with yourself, because we tend to be so hard on ourselves. And this journey it should be a very gentle journey of self-love and discovery. So have some grace with
and
yourself.
we love all of you that are watching now.
Yes, we do.
Love you too, Mary.
I love you too.
So is there anything you learned? Is there anything you want to share that kind of just brings a synopsis to?
Yeah, well, all I was going to say was, you know, in order to start, how do you start releasing the expectations and your beliefs and biases about things, you know, such as today's going to be a horrible day, my kids are always going to be that way, work's always going to suck. And it's just to really like do that self-check and become aware. When you have when you're feeling an icky feeling, that's your emotions trying to guide you on something. And so oftentimes it is an expectation that you have. So say you're going to meet someone and you find yourself, like I've noticed this when I've been going to meet someone new, that I start developing stories and things and ideas about what this person's going to be like. And, you know, that's an expectation building in my mind. It could be based on what someone said. It could be based on what I saw in their picture. And so catching myself and realizing when I'm starting to have expectations about a person or a situation or an event, and then noticing when I'm my behaviors are showing up so much so that like based on an expectation, like I think you're a mean guy, so noticing if my behavior's a little bit different for you, you know.
Yeah.
And then really what did I write? Oh, and then adopt an expectation of excellence in all things and all people. Your team, your spouse, your kids, just like do the work to really just remind yourself like to expect the best out of people, you know, and you'll be surprised what you're going to get. I've done this experiment several times with my kids, with my partners, and it really does wonders when you decide to change your expectation before, you know, going into an event. Waking up in the morning, my kids are going to be great. We're going to have such a great day. And I mean, I was shocked at the change in their behavior just from that expectation on my part. So that's my little tip of the day as far as expectations go.
Yeah, and that resonates with me. Like owning to the feeling. Owning to the feeling that you're angry and frustrated is not the other person, it's really yourself.
Yeah.
And really kind of absorbing why. Yeah. As much as when you fall in love with somebody, owning to the feeling that you may say I love you and they may not say it back.
Yeah.
But knowing that, you had that feeling once in your lifetime. Give yourself enough grace to say, you know what, I found love. Yeah. Even if it wasn't reciprocated, I still found it. You know, those are the amazing feats in life that I think we all, you know, strive for. And that we all should just revel in, even if it's not reciprocated.
Yeah. And celebrate it. Celebrate it. And don't be afraid to be your authentic self. That's going to be what I hope to teach people is show up authentically. You know, everything's going to work out better if you do. So
Rob Morales here, our CEO Network. We want to thank all of you for joining us on Wednesdays to explore this thing we call the inner journey, emotions, and not only to make ourselves better in business, but just for ourselves.
And so that we can be happy.
So that we can be content.
I thought I'd throw that in there.
Or happy, whatever it is. So we'll catch you guys next Wednesday.
Bye-bye.
Peace out and see you
Wednesday.